to be a beneficial presence on the planet. Her purpose, to be your personal advocate, to live, love, laugh, learn. Her life motto, don't die wondering. Take back your life with Dr. Marissa Faye on ubnradio.com.
And welcome. My name is Dr. Marissa, also called the Honorable Moniker, the Asian Oprah, largely due to all my past Oprah guests, as well as winning the Asian Entrepreneur of the Year award last year. And you're listening to my weekly talk radio show called Take My Advice. I'm Not Using It. Get Balanced with Dr. Marissa. Twice a week on Universal Broadcasting Network Tuesdays at naturally high noon, transmitting from the Sunset Gower Studios in Hollywood, California, and newly syndicated on NBC News Radio, KCAA, AM 1050, and soon to be on FM as well, Thursdays at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And for those of you who are tuning into the show for the first time, this is a show about hope. It focuses on your life and how to use some life balance tools to ensure that you are happy 88% of the time. So there's no gossip, no scandal, and no K-words, Kardashian talk. I'm your host, Dr. Marissa Pei. That's P for positive EI. So I promise that there's no CNN constantly negative news that can be boiled down to what is wrong with people. Instead, this show highlights what is right with people, what is right with you, and what is right with the world. So I've been blessed to have many, as I mentioned before, past Oprah guests. So if you missed any of them, including Dr. John Gray, Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith, Dr. Pat Allen, Melody Beattie, Gloria Allred, Leave It to Beaver, Jerry Mathers, Rick O'Barry, Janine Roth. Please do find them and my interviews with them on YouTube, on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and now newly on Igloo Radio. So many different ways to get splattered. Yes, I have an allergy to regrets and an addiction to joy. So join me in all of those. And if you like any of the episodes, please do give me the finger. I mean, like a thumbs up. And a little positive review. I would appreciate that. That would continue to help me spread more of this positive life around the planet. And it is the last week of the month, so we are to our fabulous, wonderful new series on the air. This is a hint on what it is. It's not the Radio for Our Deaf today. It's not Healing from Past Pain. It is Sexual Healing with Dr. Marissa and my fabulous co-host, Dr. Robin, calling in from Canada. Yay! Welcome, Dr. Robin. She's a popular TV personality from her role as host on Life Network's past top-rated show, Sex, Toys, and Chocolate, as well as a featured sex education correspondent on 3 Takes and Revamped. On the academic side, Dr. Milhausen is a University of Guelph professor where her research focuses on gender, sexuality, desire, sexual problems, and arousal. She is a respected leader on sexual education and relationships and currently on a speaking tour of Canadian universities and colleges sponsored by Trojan, talking about sexual pleasure and sexual health. Please welcome Dr. Robin Milhausen back on the air. And where are you calling from today? You're the wild traveler.
I am calling from sort of gray and gloomy New Brunswick. A beautiful place, but it's a little gray today.
Oh, well, hopefully we add a little California sunshine back into your life right now. How was the conference?
It was wonderful.
Good.
Yes, it was great. June 18th and 19th, and it was incredible. We had a really diverse program. People came from all over, and we talked about a lot about diversity in families and parenting gender-independent kids and a lot of really neat stuff.
What was the most challenging question someone asked you at the conference?
Oh, boy. Well, I think it was the talk. It was a talk I attended, actually, that was the most challenging, where they were talking about democratic parenting and how in this philosophy, everybody gets a vote. The kids get a vote, and all the parents or all the decisions in the family are made using democracy. So this I was trying to wrap my head around rather than how I parent my children where I'm in charge most of the time.
Yeah, I have my 3 and 5-year-old niece and nephew visiting from Hong Kong. So it's been a while since we've done toddlers. So
yes.
and it's a good. I've actually got a book coming out next year called Balanced Parenting. We're going to come up with a little more sexy title, but my brother says that the way I treat his kids is like the dog whisperer for children. So Democrat, I don't know about that, but I'm glad that you had a great time, and we are back on the air talking about sex. And today's topic is happy relationships. So what makes a happy relationship? And I know you've done a little bit of research on that, and we have a special guest coming on in a little bit who's actually an expert on it as well. So tell me what your take is on happy relationships.
Well, the longer I'm in one, the more I have a vested interest in trying to figure this stuff out. As I'm looking down at, the next 50 years, I think it's really important to kind of figure out what it takes to make you and your partner happy in a relationship. And, me, my research interest is sex. And,
yes.
And sex is one part of a happy relationship for sure. Mm-hmm. When things are going really well sexually in your relationship, sex actually isn't that much of a big deal. But when things are going really badly sexually, you're fighting, you're unsatisfied, actually that can account for a lot of dissatisfaction with the relationship. Mm-hmm. So again, when sex is going well, it coasts along well, and it has not a huge impact on your relationship. But when things are bad in the bedroom, the relationship takes a major downturn.
So can you fix bad relationships with good sex?
Aha, good question. I think not. I think not. But I think in the past we've talked on your show. We had a caller once who was
Kristen. I remember that.
Tons of passion and spark, but there were other parts of the relationship that weren't fulfilling. And so, no, I do not think sex is a cure-all for a bad relationship. Mm-hmm. But if the relationship is good, you want to keep the sex good too,
right?
So that
because
it all stays good.
Yes, because I do know that once there's less sex, the relationship will deteriorate. So for those who think that sex is not that important or that let it go and it's not as often just because it's not the beginning, I think there's a BS in there. I think there's a belief system that we're going to have to destroy, that somehow when you are comfortable in a relationship, sex becomes less important. So
yes.
I think
right.
that BS is BS. And so, in fact, I've tried this a couple times and it's been working. If I get into a disagreement and I can see it's going down the lane of this is going to be a full-blown argument, I will take a breath, try to disengage from my competitive head or needing to win the argument and just grab the hand and say, hey, babe, let's go settle this in the bedroom. And it's amazing how we don't even remember what it was that we were arguing about. So if you're listening to this, Dr. Marissa listeners, and your relationship is not at least an 88% fabulous, try that strategy this week. And try it once a day. So break up the routine. So if your normal thing is they walk through the door, you come home from work, you're exhausted, and you just sit in front of the TV and watch bad TV, forget to floss and go to bed, and you're too tired to do anything, I'd like you to, guys, this is specific for you. As soon as you walk through the door, I want you to grab your woman or your man by the face and just plant one. Just one. Don't even have to say a word. Women, with your partner, I'd like you to, same thing. Actually, you know what? We'll just make this an equal opportunity challenge and do the same thing. There's so, and yes, this is very self-serving because I don't know. I have this thing about being held like this before getting a kiss. There's just something about that is so, maybe too many Cinderellas, too many Snow Whites, too many romance movies. But let's do that. I want you to do that too with your husband. What's your husband's name again?
Steve.
Steve. So Steve,
Yes.
you're gonna
Steve would like that.
you're gonna get, when she gets back from New Brunswick, you're gonna get a non-verbal treat.
Well, I think one of the things we make a mistake of is waiting until 11 o'clock when we're exhausted and we fall into bed
Yes.
to have these encounters. And so I think you were really onto something by engaging in some kind of flirty, fun, affectionate behavior at a totally different time, 5 o'clock, when you are not usually probably sexual because you're thinking, I have to get dinner on the table, or I want to unpack my bag, or maybe I just want to sit down and have a glass of wine. But you actually have more energy probably at 5 o'clock than you do at 11:30 when you fall into bed.
Exactly.
And if you just keep waiting to have enough energy at 11 o'clock, you'll probably never do it.
Absolutely. So has there
there's an interesting study which I was reading recently which showed, it was a national study of Australians 16 to 64, and it showed that only 46% of men were satisfied with how much sex they were getting. 46% of men.
less than half?
Yeah. And overwhelmingly, the 54% who weren't satisfied wanted more sex.
Was there a
as opposed to
number?
less.
Yeah. Was there a number of how much they were getting it?
No, that varies. That does vary. And I don't know where that was reported. But slightly more women were satisfied with how much sex they were getting, and the women that weren't satisfied, some of them wanted less and some of them wanted more. But the men who were unsatisfied, they all wanted more, almost.
Huh.
Oh.
Yeah, I'd be really curious because I do get that question in when I do couple coaching, and they'll say, I'll ask, how often and how much and where, because I really do believe that it is one of those tools that, if used properly, can make for a better relationship. So,
well, and our caller who's coming in later, Amy, has done research on this exact thing, and whether we should just have sex, even if we aren't into it, because sex could be considered a balm for the relationship. It's sort of a glue that keeps us together. So she has some interesting ideas about having sex as a glue to keep relationships together.
Right. I know the numbers that I've heard are 2 or 3 times a week. Is the preferred, or to keep that those happy hormones going that come with the orgasm, and I think we've talked about that before. Have you heard that number?
Yes, definitely. And 2 or 3 times a week I've heard is what people are looking for. And what they're getting is somewhere between once a week and once a month is I think, what people who are dissatisfied are getting.
Wow.
Or sometimes even less.
Yes. Well, I know. The more, when I spoke at the California Women's Conference and did that Breaking the Sex Ceiling talk, one of the most sad moments I had was a woman that came up to me after and said that, one, she's never, ever had an orgasm. And then a very happy, completely opposite reaction I had from a woman. She came up to me and said, I was married for 20 years and I had sex less than 20 times in that marriage. It was a completely loveless, sexless marriage. And now she's on her second chapter, and she has it every day, and she, it's on her to-do list. And she's very, very happy.
We need to prioritize our sexual selves and
Yes.
our physical, relational, emotional health that comes with having sex.
Yes. What research are you doing now?
Well, I'm still working a little bit on the motivations for sex and whether motivations for sex make a difference in terms of sexual and relationship satisfaction. I won't steal Amy's thunder on that when she calls.
Okay. Right.
But related to that, I think not just how often you have sex or the reasons you have sex, is how long the sex you're having. We haven't talked about that.
Oh, let's talk about that.
Some recent research showed that people are on average having sex for about 15 minutes or 15 minutes or less. But the happiest, most satisfied, the people who had the most orgasms were having sex for 45 minutes or more. And those tended to be women having sex with women.
Ah, well,
But
Go
the
ahead.
duration is what counts. The duration is what counts. So with your homework where you just said planned a big fat one when they come in the door, also try and make the sexual activity last 45 minutes or more and see what happens.
You know, I missed you last month because you had that conference. So I actually had a co-host, Davy Ward, who's a tantric sex educator and expert. And she said that the average or the average arousal for the woman to be fully aroused with her tissue is 20 to 45 minutes. So that totally supports what you're saying, why 15 minutes is not enough. If that's the average, it's not enough for the woman. And 45 minutes is absolutely enough for both partners to get aroused. And I love that we're talking about this. This is exactly why I wanted to do this series, is if we don't know this and we don't know any better, and you're, movie sex is even less than that, right? Fatal Attraction. So we have to know that. And I think if men, you know that, you're going to do things differently. That's not saying that you have to have staying power necessarily, because for me, if I'm to love out loud here, just the touching, I think one of the most erotic things for me is just to get touched. And Davy had one of those exercises in her book that said you just stroke your partner from, head to toe and then back up. That's erotic, and that can be part of that 20 minutes.
Absolutely.
So just in case people think that I'm advocating the men having to go take Viagra, absolutely not.
Oh, no, and I think you're also right about people need to know this, because if there are women out there who aren't having orgasms all the time and they may be wondering, what's wrong with me? Do I have dysfunction? It may just be they're not giving their bodies enough time to get warmed up and to really feel present in the sexual encounter. So just knowing that they need to take more time and that most people need to take more time may be helpful information.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know for myself, just getting and going back to something we talked about at the very beginning of this and why we're doing this series is it also for me has to do with how comfortable I'm becoming and how uncomfortable I was just with my body, and most women not feeling that attractive necessarily with their clothes off, unless you're 20 and you have that hot body that you had when you're 20, or if you've had some surgery, or if you spend every day at the gym, which I can't possibly do. There's a little bit of that insecurity that comes with how we look naked, and to actually take off your clothes and look in the mirror and go, you look great. I can almost do that like 8 out of 10 times now with my clothes on. With my clothes off, that's a whole nother ball game. So as we become better with this series of asking for what we want, and even saying something like, honey, did you know that it actually takes us 40 minutes and they're happier relationships? Do you mind if we did this stroking exercise beforehand, or to get me, or this is what I'd like to have you do to me, and make it last longer. Then I also get more comfortable with how I feel with my clothes off. And I'll tell you guys, if you're a guy and you're listening right now, there's not a better way to make things fabulous for a woman by to just saying how gorgeous your body is and how you turn me on. And as you're taking the clothes off and leaving, a little light on, so it's not like you're pretending that you can't see me, that women love to be told that their bodies are beautiful. And even though they may not believe it, for you to say that to a woman is absolutely the most incredible aphrodisiac. At least it is for me. I know, because I've had women actually email me and message me and say, when I say that, it makes such a tremendous difference to their turn on ability. And that is a happy relationship. How's that?
Like, it has to be genuine. It does have to be genuine. And so men who give generic statements like, "Oh, you're so hot, baby," kind of thing, that doesn't actually hold a lot of water with women.
Okay. You're right.
So they want to hear, women really want to hear something specific, like about them exactly, so that their male partners, it doesn't seem like they just could be any tree in the forest or another block of wood, the women in my research have said.
Okay.
They want to feel special. So desirable and hot, yes, but uniquely so.
Yes. Okay. So, and guess what? We do have our caller on the line, our very special guest today. Thanks to Dr. Robin Milhausen, we have Dr. Amy Muise, and I hope I'm saying that name right, on with us. And she is a researcher and professor at the University of Toronto. And we are so honored and pleased to have you here with us. And here's your fabulous applause. We have 3 smart, gorgeous women from Canada on the air at the same time. Yay. Dr. Amy, welcome to the show. You are on Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get Balanced with Dr. Marissa. And Dr. Robin says that you have some fabulous research about how to make a happy relationship, especially with cuddling.
Yes, that's right. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be able to talk about this work. So in this new research that Robin is referring to, we looked at sort of this very specific aspect of sexual experiences in relationships that hadn't really been explored too much in the research before.
Okay.
And this was about after-sex affection. So what happens after couples do whatever they can sort of consider like the main event of sex.
Okay.
And what we found was that couples who are spending more time engaging in this after-sex affection, which was cuddling and caressing each other and sometimes included some intimate talk, they were feeling more satisfied not only with the sexual experience that they had just had, but also with their relationship as a whole.
Oh, so let me be technical. What qualifies as cuddling?
So we asked people about cuddling, caressing, stroking each other, and intimate talk. And we just had them let us know how long that they engaged in these behaviors. So we sort of let them define what they think of as cuddling and caressing in their relationship.
Okay.
And then we also asked them in a second study about sort of the quality of some of these activities.
And how do people sign up? I know I'm going to have listeners going, we want to be part of these studies.
Yeah.
How do you go about choosing people to get on for these kinds of things, for the research?
So we actually often recruit online. So there's different ways. We even use things like Craigslist and Kijiji to try to solicit couples to participate. Most of our research is all done via online surveys, and often we have couples report sort of each day over a number of weeks the types of things that might have happened in their relationship that day. If they engaged in sex, we ask them different questions about aspects of the sexual experience, and then, how they're feeling about their sex life and their relationship every day.
Great. And
yeah.
I'm wondering, Amy, knowing your other work, how did you come up with this idea? It is so unique, and like you've said, it's really understudied. So I'm just wondering about the backstory. Were you sitting around in the office talking with the other researchers there and realized, hey, how much are we doing of this, or where did it come from?
Yeah, it's a great question. It sort of stemmed a bit out of when I would present a lot of my work on sexuality, and we know that sex is important for overall relationship quality. People had a lot of questions about, well, what is sex and what sort of counts as sex, and could affection or intimacy do the same thing as what sex is doing for relationships? And so in a study that we started, I began to ask more questions about more specific aspects of the sexual experience. So the foreplay and sort of like whatever people considered the main event of sex, as well as this post-sex affection. And I actually wasn't totally sure what to expect in terms of what would be the most important. But when I started to look at, foreplay compared to sex, compared to after-sex affection, at least in terms of the duration, we were getting much stronger effects for this post-sex affection, at least in the context of these ongoing established relationships. So that's when I started to think that maybe there was sort of something about this aspect And in some of my other work, I've looked into affection more generally and found that this can account for some of the effects or some of the benefits that we see of engaging in sex more frequently. So it was sort of a merging of those ideas that led to this existing work.
Okay, in your studies, did you find out, and this is a BS thing, I want to see how much BS it is on a belief system scale, that men don't like to cuddle and women love to cuddle and often would actually prefer cuddling than the main event?
Not at all. We found very few gender differences in our study. So
thank you for that.
One thing that we found that was slightly different for men and women was that the longer duration of this sort of post-sex affection was linked to both sexual and relationship satisfaction for women. So it had a direct effect on their relationship satisfaction.
Okay.
Whereas for men, it impacted their relationship satisfaction as well, but it seemed to work almost all through their sexual satisfaction, which means that the amount of post-sex affection enhanced the sexual experience just as it did for women. But that particularly accounted for the effect on relationship satisfaction for men, whereas women got that effect, but they also got this direct effect on their relationship satisfaction.
Thank you for that.
So this is a very nuanced sort of difference, and all of the other effects that I report in the paper about the quality of the affection and some of these longer-term effects, we see these effects over a 3-month period of time. So people who spent more time engaging in after-sex affection we did like a 3-week daily study where they completed surveys each day. They felt more satisfied 3 months down the road.
Wow, long-term.
And all of these other effects were the same for both men and women.
So that eradicates the BS around that men are just doing the afterglow for women, that it's actually good for them as well. Correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is, just keep in mind that this is in the context of established committed relationships.
Okay.
So I don't know that would necessarily be the same if we're talking about more casual sexual encounters. There's a little bit of research on this that suggests stronger gender differences in those types of sexual experiences. But definitely in the context of established relationships, we see very few gender differences.
Okay. So this study was for not for the casual.
No, these are, one study is just individuals, but they're all in romantic relationships. And then we had a second study that we actually had both members of romantic couples.
Okay. Because it would be, I'd be curious as a follow-up for casual sex, BS belief systems, that, you know, how satisfying is that the old adage, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. I hope I can say that on FCC, but for the NBC show. But that whole, you know, because it is unfortunately part of the other side. If you're not in a relationship, there's this belief that it's a good thing, at least from the male perspective. They get what they need and then they move on. And I can't believe that for women that would be satisfying.
Well, I think it might depend on what people's goals are for a sexual encounter, both in relationships and casual relationships. So some people might be pursuing casual relationships, you know, more for sexual release or like because they're attracted to the person, whereas others might be desiring some type of an intimate connection or more of an ongoing relationship, even if it's casual. So it might depend on people's sort of goals for the encounter in terms of how much incorporating some of these intimate behaviors would be beneficial.
Yeah, Dr. Robin and I have talked about this in the past. I'm always curious or just wondering if it is a gender possibility for women to treat casual sex the same way men do. So sorry, that was my biased line of questioning.
Okay.
Since Amy mentioned the motives, that does segue, and I was highlighting earlier some of your research about whether we should have sex regardless of our reasons for having sex. So we were talking about earlier, we should just have sex more often. It's great for our relationship. It helps us build intimacy. But your work talks about sometimes when we have sex for maybe not so great reasons, this actually can have negative effects on the relationship. So I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about that too.
Yeah, that's right. So we've actually been really interested in people's reasons for engaging in sex and how that then influences how satisfied they feel with the experience, how much desire they feel, and how close they feel to their partner. And what we tend to find is we've looked at sort of these two broad categories of reasons for engaging in sex. Obviously, there's hundreds of reasons people could choose to engage in sex, but we tend to look at approach reasons, which are you have sex to pursue positive outcomes, and in the context of a relationship, this often means positive outcomes for the relationship, like enhancing intimacy or feeling closer to your partner, or even pursuing a partner's pleasure. Whereas avoidance reasons tend to be things that you want to avoid negative outcomes. So you want to avoid feeling guilty or avoid disappointing your partner or avoid conflict that may arise from rejecting your partner's sexual advances. And I mean, as you might expect, we find that when people engage in sex for these more approach reasons to sort of pursue these positive outcomes, even though what I will highlight, when they're not necessarily completely self-focused outcomes, so these could be even pursuing positive outcomes for the partner or the relationship, which is actually where we find the strongest effects. But when people pursue sex for those reasons, they tend to enjoy the experience more, feel more satisfied, and actually have higher desire. So it does seem to matter why people are engaging in sex, specifically over time. So we see immediate sort of negative effects of engaging in sex for avoidance goals, but we often compare that to these more approach or positive reasons, not necessarily to not having sex at all. So perhaps on that one day, even if you're a little bit more avoidance motivated, engaging in sex may not be detrimental, but if you continue to engage in these sort of avoidance-motivated reasons for engaging in sex, it does seem to build up over time and then lead to more negative outcomes.
Not happy relationships.
Exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
feeling less satisfied and even feeling less committed to the relationship over time.
So I'm trying to you guys are the researchers and I'm the normal, not the normal. You're not abnormal. You're the researcher and I'm just the average Joette. So for the average Joette, and I hear this from many of my women listeners, is like, so what do I do when the negative motivation that you're talking about, the negative motivating factors, is I know he wants it. And so I know he wants it and I don't want it. I don't feel like it. But I know that he wants it, so I'll do it. And I can't tell him, and they've been listening to you, Dr. Robin, on, when to say and how to say, this is what I'd like, and this is what this is what's going to turn me on. And they're not interested. And they've gotten into this habit and he gets satisfied and she doesn't. So then what?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point. One of the things that I think about when people are really asking about if they feel like they're avoidance motivated and they want to try to be more approach motivated, one of the things that I sometimes recommend is to try to get yourself into a different frame of mind. And we've seen that this is possible from other research that's looked at approach and avoidance goals. So it can be possible to sort of shift your mind frame. So to shift your mind frame towards more approach, you might think about aspects of the sexual experience that you might enjoy or might feel good for you, even sometimes if that's like that you might feel closer to your partner or you might even enjoy giving them pleasure in certain ways. But I do think that it's important really in the context of what you're talking about, that people are also sharing what they would like out of the sexual encounter. So if they're doing that and their partner's responsive to that, then it will be much easier, I would imagine, to think of the aspects of the experience that you might enjoy or might want to pursue. And at least my friends that do more clinical work tell me that this sort of reframing has helped a lot of people, particularly women with low desire, to feel better and to enjoy their sexual encounters more.
And to your point earlier, Dr. Robin, it might be, and maybe this is related to the cuddling, that the time that it takes for a woman to get into that frame where it is pleasurable does take longer. And so if the man or the partner or woman is focused or at least plans for a longer ramp up time, so to speak, it might be that approach, what you're calling the approach motivation will trump the avoidance motivation.
Yeah, and I think, another important point to make is, where these avoidance motives come from. And I think sometimes they come from maybe a partner reacting badly to you rejecting them sexually in the past. So maybe making you feel guilty around sexuality, or, creating a conflict if sex isn't always pursued when they want it. So I think that it's also important for maybe the higher desire partner to be understanding of the other partner's needs as well, and to maybe be attuned to what might work for them in order to get them to a place where they'd be excited and interested in engaging in sex.
That's a great point. I love that term, higher desire partner. So I just thought of a Dr. Marissa challenge and game for this week as well, for this month, is take turns being today you're the higher desire partner. Now act like it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because I think it's important to put yourself, and important for the higher desire partner to put themselves in the shoes of the lower desire partner as well. I think just understanding each other's perspectives could be helpful when you're trying to negotiate these sexual experiences.
Well, I'm hoping all the men listening really get that point, to sort of step into the moccasins of the woman, and just even dealing with the time difference that we've highlighted today, Dr. Robin, around the arousal time and the arousal gender difference. I hope you guys hear that.
Yeah, and the research has focused a lot on women's experience as being the lower desire partner, but my PhD student, Sarah Murray, for her dissertation has interviewed 30 men, 30 to 65 years old, and they talk a lot about how it feels to be the person who is rejected all the time, and they just wish that their partner would initiate, would worship them, would desire them, would give them compliments. So I think that it's good definitely to take perspective. Both partners in these relationships where their needs aren't getting met, or where they feel like they're not connecting about these issues, both partners are pretty dissatisfied and feeling hurt and not understood.
Thank you for balancing that out, Dr. Robin. I just had this flash, and how must it be for a guy to be, every time he reaches out, for the woman to say, "Ugh, really? Really? Now? Again? I'm tired. I've had a long day. Haven't I done enough?" Yeah, that's got to be bad. That sort of trains men to initiate in really basic ways, because if they think they're going to get shut down, so they're just going to initiate in like, "Well, do you want to do it?" which is less likely to be responded to in a positive way, because that doesn't really work well for many women. And we're talking about gender differences here in heterosexual relationships, and not every relationship fits into these kind of stereotypes. But yeah, I think that it leads men to initiate sex in ways that are less effective, because they're so used to getting rejected. And the research does suggest men get rejected far more than women do in heterosexual relationships. Do you have like a top 10 David Letterman list of lines that work well on the approach motivation? Like what should the partner say, the high desire?
Oh, that's interesting. I'm not really sure. I think it would be more about sort of understanding what works for your partner, and how to read each other's signs. We give off a lot of different vibes that are sort of nonverbal, and understanding and acknowledging. I think sometimes if you're the lower desire partner and you sense that your partner is interested in having sex and you're not, you might sort of, instead of acknowledging their need or opening up this response, you might turn over or pretend to be asleep or something like that just, I think, makes the rejection sting that much worse, or makes the person feel completely ignored or unacknowledged. So I don't think that it's always that the low desire partner has to give in to what the higher desire partner wants, but I think it's important to acknowledge both partners' needs in the relationship. So if you can sense that your partner's interested in sex, I think it goes a much longer way to acknowledge that need, even if you can't meet it at that time, or you still want to negotiate what's going to happen.
Right. That's a good word, negotiate. That's what
I think it just opens up. And the same thing, if you're the high desire partner, you're initiating, and you can sense that your partner's not really into it, instead of sort of pursuing them in this way that doesn't seem to be turning them on, you could sort of stop and acknowledge that they don't seem very interested in if there are potentially things that you might do or a way that they could change the situation that might make them more interested and excited.
Right.
That is brilliant, Amy. That is brilliant. I love that.
Yes, if it's not right now, baby, but I promise I'll wake you up first thing in the morning.
Well,
That's one of the things I've become interested in, right, is these ways to reject that sting less, I guess, or that are better received. And I think part of it is really acknowledging the person's need instead of just ignoring and pretend that you don't notice that they're initiating sex with you.
Right. That's great.
We can be better, more skilled initiators, and we can be kinder, more skilled rejectors.
Fabulous, Dr.
All
Robin.
of us,
That's
probably. There are skills to both sides of the fence.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
I triple agree. That's awesome. I don't know how personal I should get. Dr. Robin, is there something Steve that says that usually works with you?
Let me give the kids a bath, and then I'll do the laundry.
Oh, great. Guys.
That research is split, actually. My early research suggested that men who do chores around the house are considered more attractive to their partners, but later research suggested that men who do more chores actually get less sex. So I think it's going to be different for every person and every partner, but certainly the approach matters to me and the time matters to me, like we were talking about earlier.
Right.
11:30 at night just isn't a great time, and so a perceptive partner should recognize that and strategize around it and find a completely different time that isn't 11:30 at the end of the day.
Yeah. I think that's why date night is absolutely critical. Talking about happy relationships is making that time. There's a book, The Artist's Way, and it's saying make a date with yourself to be creative. I think the relationships way is making a date for that cuddling and the sex to happen. Absolutely.
And I think, that's what I often say as a take home from some of this research about the affection and sex, because people often want to know, like, how often should I be having sex and what's the ideal amount? And I think really it's more about just finding time to connect and be intimate with your partner, whatever that means. So it seems like some of these more affectionate behaviors can go a long way.
Right.
And we know there's lots of benefits to engaging in sex, whatever sort of that's considered by each couple. So I think finding that time, even if it has to be scheduled in potentially or talked about ahead of time, I think it's just important to acknowledge and find that time to enhance that intimacy and keep that connection with the partner.
Yeah. And balancing. Obviously, I'm saying schedule, but obviously spontaneity is fabulous too. But I'm great that you brought this up, because Dr. Robin and I was asking Dr. Robin about what is that average from your research of what they say makes the most healthy or happy relationships. How often should you be having sex?
So the longer term couples in most of the studies that I've conducted have sex about once a week. And then sometimes newer or dating couples have sex a little more often on average, more like twice a week. So it tends to be somewhere in that range as the average. And we do know that people who have sex more frequently do report higher relationship satisfaction. But I think there's going to be a lot of individual differences there. I think it depends on what might be the ideal for each couple. But it does tend to average out around once a week, which often people might be a bit...
I'm surprised
by. Like, what were you expecting it to be?
2 to 3.
Yeah.
Even that I think is low.
More dating couples, early new couples.
Why wouldn't you want to have sex every day?
I think this is an interesting thing about how desire changes over time. I think in an early relationship, desire tends to be quite high, and you do really want to have sex with your partner all the time. It's always on your mind. You're always thinking. But as you become more comfortable and connected, I think desire just tends to sort of normatively decline. It doesn't mean you don't desire your partner anymore, but the desire doesn't tend to be as high or as sort of obsessive and all-consuming and focused. It really couldn't be. I think we have to, as our relationships progress, like early in a relationship, you're almost obsessively, involved with your partner. You think about them all the time. Often
Right.
people even eat less and sleep less in new relationships. So we really are focused, but we couldn't maintain that for years on end typically. So desire often tends to wane and becomes less of sort of this immediate thing that we always think about with our partners. It doesn't mean we don't want to maintain our sexual connection, but there's often other things that take precedence in terms of jobs and kids and other household tasks. So I think it's more about the desire. I think if you ask someone in a very new relationship, they would imagine that their desire for their partner would continue like that
Right.
for years on end. But then you talk to someone in a longer relationship, potentially they would say they wish they had higher desire for sex.
Yeah, that's
but
the
that other
thing.
things.
That's my point. Is that wouldn't it be better for relationships to continue on that? I'm not saying 24/7, but I mean if it's so good, and we've been talking in the series about how good it is for you and the health benefits and the relationship benefits, that the body benefits, the immune system benefits. Why then would it be okay for it to wane? Why would it be a belief system that desire goes away? I mean, isn't that counterproductive to what a happy relationship should be?
I mean, I don't think it's
I'm pushing the edge
counterproductive.
of this envelope, by the way, if you haven't noticed.
I mean, potentially, if it declined to nothing, I think maybe not for all, but for many relationships, that would be problematic. But I mean, we're still talking about people connecting on average 1 to 2 times a week in these long-term relationships. And sometimes in my samples, I have people that have been together like 20 or 30 or 40 years. So definitely being able to maintain that connection even once a week, I think is really beneficial. I mean, there's lots of different perspectives on why desire might decline. But one reason, if you take an evolutionary perspective, is that over time, if you have children, your attention should focus more to caring for your children than necessarily to being intimate with your partner. And that's why we have this high desire early on. And then one explanation for why it might shift over time as we become more secure and comfortable with our partners and we sort of become co-parents. But I think that it might just be in longer term relationships sort of reevaluating what your idea is of like a successful, happy sex life. And I think if the sex that you're having is quality, both partners are enjoying it. Maybe even if you wish there was a bit more spontaneous, like it was a bit more spontaneous, or you wish you could be having it a bit more frequently, if you're enjoying it and you're sort of maintaining that connection around once a week or so, I mean, I think you're doing pretty good. To be honest, I do.
Yeah, you can tell. Are you married by any chance?
I am, but very newly married. I just got married on New Year's Eve.
Yeah, you can tell both of you are happily married and I'm happily divorced. I think that's the difference in the questions and the answers here.
Yeah. But I do think sex is very important for relationships. So I'm not saying it's not. I just think
I'm just really curious about that. And why I just, maybe it's because I'm equating that once a week with not having, not holding hands or not kissing or not sitting, watching a movie together and just having that kind of, if we're calling that, like you were saying, not the main event, but having that, the satisfaction that comes from that kind of intimacy.
And I think that can really help. I mean, there's some research to suggest that as couples age and sex declines, even if one of the reasons why sex declines in older age is because of sort of like some physical issues, that sex just isn't possible as often, the couples who are able to maintain the affection and the connection, even without the actual act of intercourse, can maintain sexual satisfaction. So I think this intimacy, this affection, is really important and can actually help to maintain satisfaction even in the face of somewhat lower sexual frequency than what couples might ideally want.
Right. Well, we are
trying as they age that that the focus shifts from the traditional kind of the main event sexual activities, but we need longer foreplay to get aroused, and maybe orgasms aren't the main focus. So as we age and our maybe sexual functioning declines, we still actually may experience even more satisfaction and intimacy. So we have a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great
Absolutely.
point. Well, we are butting up at the end of our fabulous show. Thank you so much, Dr. Amy Muise, for coming on. Congratulations on your new marriage. And may you
Thank
have...
you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, often and much and fabulous sex, since this is our series. Dr. Robin, as usual, thank you so much for being a fabulous co-host and letting me talk and actually put some credibility behind my sex talk. And please have an amazing couple of months. I know I'll see you in you are traveling and doing your own vacation around sex. So we'll see you in 2 months. Any shout out, Dr. Amy, to anyone on the air that you would like to say hi to?
Oh, I wasn't expecting this. Well, I'll say hi to my husband, James, and I'll also say hi to everyone in the Relationships and Wellbeing Lab at the University of Toronto, Mississauga, because this is where this recent work comes out of. So I owe all of them a shout out for their contribution to the work I talked to it today.
That's great. And did you know that Dr. Robin and I were born at the same hospital in Kitchener, Ontario?
I heard you talking about that in one of the other shows.
Isn't that amazing?
What a small world.
Oh, it is. Absolutely. So peace and blessings to you both. Let's give them one more round of applause.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
Talk to you in a few months.
You got it.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Well, that was another fabulous episode on our series, Sexual Healing with Dr. Marissa. You've been listening to Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced with Dr. Marissa Pay. That's P for positive, EI. Tune in next week for another 2 shows of fabulous hope and happiness. Remember, it's all about balance. Peace in and peace out.